WordPress sites are great at holding content. Got some words and pictures you want to show the world? WordPress is a great tool for that job. I'd even argue that in at least some capacities, it's clearly the best for it. But in building sites, you'll find that you're constrained, either metaphorically or practically, by the limitations of the WordPress default post types, which confusingly means both posts and pages. In some situations, this will simply be that you're looking to create something clearly different than either of those things. Forms is a common example. Even if you mangled a default post type to serve the purpose, the concept just doesn't fit well. Another place that the need for new post or content types reveals itself is when you've created a deeply nested hierarchy within your default page's content type to get the kind of permalinks you want. It's quite likely that if you have more than 10 pages nested under a particular parent page within WordPress, it's a place you could benefit from making a new content type. Separately, if you find that you're regularly using a particular post category of your blog in strange ways and consequently find yourself banging your head against the logic in your template files to make your post look like you want, you probably want to make a different content type for that. And if you've been forced to hack your permalink structure to be sensitive to the category of a post to give your post in that special category a sane URL, it's again probably a case where you should use a custom post type. WordPress is all about creating content and making it easy to do so. With that said, there are various kinds of content, and WordPress can't account for all of it. We want our plugin to have its own pages. We want to take advantage of the categories and tags and all the editors that come with posts, but on its own page. It would be quite cumbersome to have to set this all up, but WordPress provides an easy way to do this. In the resource section, I provide a link to the post type codex page. By default, WordPress provides 7 post types, which are post, page, attachment, revision, navigation menu, custom CSS, and change sets. So what's the advantage of creating a custom post type? Well, you'll see in just a few moments. Let's create a custom post type. We're going to add an action hook called init. This hook is triggered when WordPress begins to initialize the data required for the current page. This hook should be used to help set up your plugin. The function we want to call is recipe init. This is where we should set up our custom post type. Let's create a file called init.php inside the includes folder and define the function here. Make sure to include it from your plugin file. In the resource section, you'll find a link to the register post type function. This function is extensively documented, so I suggest you take some time to read it after this lecture is over. Go down to the example section, and we're going to copy and paste this bit of code into the init function. Let's go over what this does. First up, we have this labels array. All these values are actually just pieces of text that will appear throughout the custom post type. Most of them are self-explanatory. If we look at the documentation, you'll find the description for each one. You'll notice that each label is translated. There's a new translation function called _x. This function is the same as the double underscore function, except the second parameter allows you to add a context. This is useful for when you have two words that are the same, but they have different meanings in the current translation. For example, the word base is spelled the same, but there are two different meanings. It can either mean the fish base or the instrument base. Therefore, this _x function can be useful to let the translator know about the various meanings and what the word currently being translated means. It doesn't really do anything for the plugin itself. It's just helpful for the translator. Let's change the text domain for each of these functions to our text domain, which is recipe. My text editor has a nice search and replace feature by pressing Ctrl F followed by pressing Ctrl R. Next, I want you to change each text value to recipe instead of books, like so. WordPress will take care of placing these labels in the appropriate spot. I'll also change the _x function to the normal __ function. I'm going to remove any context as well, as we really don't need context for the translator. Next up is the args array. This will contain a list of settings for the custom post type. The first one is the labels key. This will be set to the labels array we created previously. Next up is the description. This is just a simple description about the custom post type. I'm going to set this to a custom post type for recipes. The public value is whether or not the content generated from this post type is available to read on the front end. Set this to true since we want it to be public. Publicly queryable asks if the post type can be used in the URL to query it. This should also be true. Show UI means should WordPress generate a UI. Set this to true as we do want WordPress to generate the UI for us. We will later extend this UI to suit our needs. Show in menu asks if this post type should appear in the menu of the admin dashboard. Set this to true. Query var works hand in hand with publicly queryable to help with adding the post type to the query var array. Rewrite allows us to customize the URL for a custom post type. This accepts an array, but we only want to change the slug. Let's set this to recipe. You'll see what this looks like when we create a recipe. Capability type allows you to define how this post type is handled by users. For example, who gets to publish recipes and who gets to review other recipes, etc. We set this to post since we want to let WordPress just use its default settings. This means that contributors can create recipes but can't publish. Editors can modify recipes and unpublish them as well. Basically, this takes care of permissions and such. Has archive asks if our post type will have an archive. Let's leave this as true. Hierarchical asks if our plugin allows for recipes to have parent recipes and so on and so forth. In our case, it doesn't make much sense for a recipe to be built on top of another, so we're going to leave this as false. Menu position is the location this menu item will be placed. I'm going to change this to 20. This value should be experimental for you. If you believe that your custom post type should be placed at the top, then you should set this to 1. The lower the number, the higher it's placed on the top of the menu. Supports is a very important value to set. Let's take a look at the documentation for a second. This is an array of components we can add to our post type. What are they exactly? Well, if we look at a regular post, you can see we have this title field, a content editor, categories, tags, etc. We can actually use those in our post type without having to actually recreate those ourselves. Here's what we want to add support for. Title, editor, author, thumbnail. We don't want excerpts or comments. That's it. Well, actually, there is one more value we want to add, and that's taxonomies. Taxonomies may seem like a complex term, but it isn't. Taxonomies are basically just words or phrases related to our post. For example, when you create tags, WordPress's search engine will search for those tags and find what posts have those tags. You can create your own taxonomies, but we actually want to take advantage of WordPress's built-in taxonomies. In our case, we want to take advantage of categories and tags, so this key's value should be an array with category and post tag. Now all we have to do is call the function register post type. The first parameter is the name of our post type, which is recipe. The second parameter is all the settings for the post type. Refresh the admin dashboard and you should now see the recipe post type being displayed. And just like that, WordPress will generate all these pages for us. You can even see our labels being outputted. You can create recipes and manage them easily using WordPress's UI. All it took was a few lines of code. We can now begin extending this post type.